It's late, it's after midnight, but I need to talk about Whoopi Goldberg and the Holocaust and Jews and race. I'll probably post this on Facebook tomorrow morning. I don't have a radio show anymore, so I need to talk this out. I did see the comments Whoopi Goldberg made about the Holocaust, and I'm not offended. I do think she has some misunderstandings, though, but I don't think she should have been um, taken off the show. If you haven't heard, Whoopi Goldberg was talking very rightly about the horrific banning of the comic Maus, M-A-U-S, which is about the Holocaust. The Nazis are depicted as cats, the Jews are depicted as mice, and some foolish school in Tennessee banned it, presumably, supposedly because of nudity and foul language, which is kind of not the point. Um, Without going too much on that, I would just say that I understand why some conservatives don't want to teach history. I understand why Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, opposes the teaching of Black history. Even as he supposedly celebrates Black History Month, he puts in an executive order to ban the teaching of racism in America because he understands that racism makes some white people feel bad. To me, learning about racism doesn't make good people feel bad. It might make racists feel bad. But if you don't identify with the people committing the racism, if you see them as the antithesis of who you are, even if they were your ancestors, then it shouldn't bother you to learn that white people in America were cruel to black people in America. Slavery, the history. I don't want to get too far afield on that, although I strongly believe that we must teach all of American history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that the Republican attempt to censor our history is akin to exactly what Vladimir Putin does in the Soviet Union, Russia as well. But let's get back to Whoopi Goldberg. Let's talk about Jews and race and the Holocaust and slavery and all that stuff. Whoopi said that the Holocaust is not about race, because white people were doing it to white people, is what she said. It's about man's inhumanity to man. And it's true she doesn't get it. And she should get it. But when people don't get something, I try to look and see what their motivation is. Is it a motivation of malice or a motivation of ignorance? In this case, I don't think there's malice at all. I don't think Whoopi Goldberg is anti-Semitic. I don't think she has any malice against Jewish people. I think she's just not understanding who Jews are or our history in much the way that people who aren't African American often don't understand African American history. So I'm very sympathetic. When people don't understand Jewish things or gay things, I like to tell them. I don't like to punish them for their lack of understanding, as long as it's not based in malice, and I don't think it is in her case. So let's talk about race. Race is a construct. It is a social construct. It is not a biological construct. The differences among humanity are vast. The differences between men and women, and people are of different heights, people are of different builds. There's all kinds of differences among humanity. The fact that hundreds of years ago, people who wanted to enslave others decided to choose particular traits of certain African heritage traits, sub-Saharan African actually, as being black, quote unquote, was their choice. They did it in order to colonize and mistreat and use the labor of black people against their will in order to enslave them. That's where black was created. Yeah, you might say, okay, no, but blacks are different race. They look different from white people. Yeah, they do. They do. Tall people look different from short people. Fat people look different from thin people. People look differently. But why do we choose these traits that matter? Why do we say, oh, well, the Asians are a different people? And then a different race. We call Asians a different race, not a different people, a different race. It's a construct. It's a social construct. And it has value because historically it has value. The construct. It has meaning because people chose to give it meaning, not because it has any real biological meaning. We could divide people up into young and old, or fast and slow, or mentally, well or mentally unwell, or physically well or physically unwell, or all manners of disability. There's all kinds of ways to divide people up into categories. So race is a construct. And it's important to understand that black people did not create the construct. White people, and again, what are white people? Specifically the English colonizers, the Portuguese who enslaved Africans, Dutch, the others, the colonizers created this construct with weird rules, right? The mixed race rule. Somehow if you're half black and half white, you're not mixed race, you're black. The one drop rule, they called it. Well, these aren't rules at all. These isn't science at all. Again, it's a social construct. That's what it is. That does not diminish in any way, shape, or form the atrocities committed in the name of race. Those are real. That's history. And because of those atrocities, the need to repair the damage and the continuing systemic racism in the United States and around the world, all of that exists. And there's no conflict between saying that systemic racism exists and that the whole idea of race is a construct to begin with. Those two things are not inconsistent. Okay, let's put race aside. Let's talk about Jews. Who are the Jews? Are the Jews a race? Are the Jews a religion? Lots of people think, okay, Jews aren't a race. We're a religion. I would say, and obviously if you ask two Jews, you might get three opinions on this, but I would say that I believe, and I think most Jews believe, that we are neither a race nor a religion. We are a people. Let me tell you why I use that word. It's a very careful word that I use, a people. The reason we're not a race is that by the social constructs of racism created by the colonizers hundreds of years ago, including the people in Virginia, race is defined as sub-Saharan African is black. That's a race. And people who live in East Asia are Asian. Used to be called Oriental, from the East. South Asian, Indian, is that a race? I'm not even sure. Again, I don't make these rules. Nobody makes these rules. The rules don't exist. They're fluid. Are Arabs a separate race? Most people say no. I mean, the Caucasus is, nearby. Persia and the Jewish people, and this is tough. That's why I want to talk it out. My point is that I would say Jews are not a race, according to Jews, because there are black Jews. There are Jews from Africa. There are Jews with lots of melanin in their skin. You can convert and become part of the Jewish people. You can leave the Jewish people. So it's hard to leave a people, like it's hard to leave the French people or the American people, but you can. Like a nation, Jews are also a nation. We are a people, a nation. You can join it and you can leave it, but it's tough. It's not easy. We're not, though, entirely a religion either. Judaism is a religion. Judaism is the religion of the Jews, but you don't have to believe in God to be a Jew, neither under Jewish law or even under what the Nazis thought. It's tricky. Christianity is a religion. That's why people don't understand Jews. Christianity is a religion, and Islam is a religion. To be a Christian, it's simple. You believe Jesus is the Son of God. You believe in the Trinity. You say that, and bingo, you're a Christian. You can be of any race, any people. You believe that, you're a Christian. You don't believe that, you're not a Christian. Islam. If you submit to Allah, if you believe there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, you're Muslim. And if you don't, you're not. You're not Muslim, even if you're Arab, even if you live in the Middle East, if you don't believe the tenets of Islam. Christianity and Islam are easy that way. They are religions, and people can be of any people and join those religions or leave those religions. Judaism is a religion, but the Jewish people are not. See, Christianity is named from Christ, meaning anointed one, meaning the Lord. Christians believe in Christ, again, as the Messiah. Islam means submission to God. Again, these are religious terms. Judaism did not create the Jews. The Jews existed before Judaism. Judaism means the religion of the Jews. What's Jew? Jew means the people of Judea. Where's Judea? Judea comes from the tribe of Judah. Judea was a kingdom that existed in what is today the state of Israel, centered around Jerusalem, southern West Bank. They were the tribes not conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BCE, and they formed the remnant that became the Jewish people. So Jews are named for a land, not for a religion. In that way, we're more like the French, or the English, or the Dutch, or the Chinese, all of whom are peoples named for the land, where they came from. Now, Judaism is the religion of the Jews. Most Jews consider themselves Jewish, and many practice Judaism, but you don't have to practice Judaism to be a Jew. You don't have to believe in God even to be a Jew. Judaism is defined by Jewish law, which is either you're the child of a Jewish mother, or you choose to accept Judaism. You can convert to Judaism, and you can leave the people as well. I told you it's tricky. But let's move on to the Holocaust. Let's move on to what Whoopi Goldberg said. She said the Holocaust is not about race. White people were doing things to white people. It's about man's inhumanity to man. And that's not quite it either. Maybe the Cambodian genocide, and I'm not an expert on that, was about man's inhumanity to man. Maybe it wasn't. Excuse me if I've gotten what the Khmer Rouge did wrong. It's not my expertise. The Nazis tried to annihilate the Jewish people. To take every man, woman, and child and wipe Jewish man, woman, or child and wipe us off the face of the earth. I guess man's inhumanity to man, a better example than the Khmer Rouge would be North Korea, which brutally mistreats its citizens, not based on their ethnicity, but based on their perceived danger to the government. Maybe their grandparents were against the regime, so they put them in these lifetime prison camps. That's an example of man's inhumanity to man. Holocaust was different. The Holocaust was the systematic attempt to wipe out a people. At the time in 1939, there were 18 million Jews in the world. When the Holocaust was done, there were 12 million. 1 out of every 3 Jewish people on the planet were exterminated. 1 out of 3. You won't find a nation on earth that suffered that kind of genocide during World War II other than the Jewish people. I don't think 1 in 3 gypsies were killed. I mean, if they were, again, I could be wrong about that. My point is that the Nazis did consider Jewishness to be a race. They did. And even though we Jews don't consider ourselves to be a race, for the most part, the Nazis considered us to be a race. And in that way, it is similar to racial construct in the United States. Remember, blacks didn't define race, white people did. Jews didn't define the Jews as a race, the Nazis did. The persecutors, the oppressors, define race. So Jews were murdered because we were considered to be a race by the Nazis, who defined us as such and said even if you're a quarter Jewish, if one grandparent was Jewish, you had to be systematically exterminated and murdered because one of your grandparents was Jewish. So that's close to the one drop rule. What Whoopi needs to understand is that racism is the act of an oppressor defining others as an inferior or lesser than race and then proceeding to persecute them, whether it be by genocide or by enslavement. In that way, the experience is very similar to what happened to blacks in America. And it's very different, right? I mean, blacks were enslaved and murdered in the Middle Passage. And in Nazi Germany, Jews were simply murdered as much as quickly as possible. I don't like that Whoopi Goldberg just said on Stephen Colbert that she's not going to talk about this again. That's not the right way to deal with this. Let's talk about it. Let's talk openly about issues of race and anti-Semitism. And, by the way, anti-Semitism, that's another stupid word. It makes no sense at all. In fact, anti-Semitism is a word created by racists who argued that Jews were a separate race called the Semites and that anti-Semitism was a good thing. A guy by the name of Wilhelm Marr in the late 1800s, 1870s or 80s, decided that the German term, he was German, Judenhaten, Jew hatred, didn't seem friendly enough. So he converted it to the more friendly sounding term, anti-Semitism. I don't even like to use that. Just call it Jew hatred. That's what it is. And Jew hatred is real and severe and continues today. If you look at hate crimes in the United States, more committed against black people than any other. Number 2 is Jews. Number 3, gay and lesbian people. And in fact, if you look at our percentage in the population of America, gay people and Jewish people get more hate crimes per capita, per Jew and LGBT person existing, than blacks do. But it's not a competition. It's merely to show that there's a lot of hate to go around. I'm going to end this because it's long, but my point is that I don't blame Whoopi Goldberg for not understanding this. I want her to understand. I wish we could have this conversation. I think she has goodwill, which is why I don't think she should be suspended. And I don't think she understands why people are so angry. But I'm not angry at her. I think there's a lot of confusion on these topics, particularly when it comes to Jews. Are Jews white? Some people say, yeah, Jews are white. I don't like that either. I don't consider Jews white. I hate answering the damn census form. We are not of European extraction. We are of Middle Eastern extraction, right? That's where we're from. We're from Judea. That's where we get the name Jews. Arabs are from Arabia. That's where they get the name Arabs. Arabs and Jews are from the same general region of the world, the Middle East. And that's generally considered white according to the rules of the racists because the Caucasus, which is, that area where Armenia and Georgia and Iran are, not usually seen as the whitest area, that's called Caucasian. Oh, none of this makes any sense. It's designed by persecutors to persecute other people. So the fact that someone gets call something racist or not racist is kind of not the point. The point is that, are you part of a traditionally persecuted people? That matters. And then if I go to the census form, I see, well, there's black and there's white, and then there's also Hispanic or Latino. But Hispanic and Latino aren't race either. You can be black and Latino. You can be white and Latino. You can be white and Hispanic, black and Hispanic. So why is it separate? Well, it's separate because of historic persecution. That's why. And we count it in a certain way. But all of this is arbitrary. All of it is arbitrary. And I've heard people say, well, Arabs are people of color and Jews aren't. Well, that makes no sense. Arabs and Jews are from the same region of the world, from the Middle East. I think maybe better to say that Arabs are not people of color because they're not considered black according to the old standards, or that Jews and Arabs are both people of color. I don't know. I don't have an easy answer here. That's part of why I'm struggling. That's part of why I'm talking about it so much. I can tell you there was a time in America when Jews were not considered white. And that time is as recently as my own grandparents. Of course, I guess there was a time in America when Irish and German and Italians probably weren't considered white because white is defined by the persecutors. I think we could talk about people's privileges. I think we could talk about peoples. I think that race is a very tricky issue. We're taking something defined by persecuting people and using it and arguing over who's white and who's not. Whoopi Goldberg said, well, a Jew can pass as non-Jewish and a black person can't. Well, that's probably more likely to be true. But there are definitely black people who can pass as white, given the weird definitions we have of black people, saying if you're of mixed race, then you're black. Well, there are definitely people who consider themselves African American who I thought were white. It could pass as white because, Plessy v. Ferguson was 1/8 black and therefore was removed from the rail car. Plessy was, and got angry because, Plessy considered himself to be white because he was 7/8 white. Some black people can pass as white. Some Jewish people can pass as non-Jewish. And I know many, many people who say, I bet that person is Jewish, either by facial features or by a last name, or by wearing Hasidic garb with the black hat and the payas and everything else. Some gay people can pass as straight. Some cannot. So I don't think passing is quite the right answer. As someone who's Jewish and gay, I have people more often think I'm straight than they think I'm not Jewish. All of this is to say that what matters is that people not hate people based on prejudging them, based on their race or ethnicity or peoplehood or religion or sexual orientation or anything else. It's important to understand that the Holocaust isn't just about inhumanity, the way North Korea's mistreatment of its people is about inhumanity. It's about the systemic attempt to annihilate a people. It's about genocide. And I do want Whoopi to understand that. At the same time, I fully understand that the Jewish experience in Europe is very different from the Jewish experience in America, as is the black experience. I do think that when Whoopi talks about sort of white-on-white violence, that's not a good thing to say any more than when white people talk about black-on-black violence. It's a way to diminish violence, which should never be diminished. I realize I've gone sort of stream of consciousness here, and I'll end this video. But I feel very strongly that people need to learn about race and understand what it is and what it isn't, to learn about the Jewish people, understand who we are and who we're not, to learn about history, to learn about the Holocaust, to learn about slavery, to learn about all the bad things that human beings have done and how they continue to do that, how the traces of racism continue as systemic racism today. The reason why we have to teach racism and race, even though it's a complete made-up construct, is because systemic racism continues today. That's what Glenn Youngkin doesn't understand. He doesn't understand that those who fail to teach black history are condemned to repeat it, and we're repeating it now. The same is true about the Holocaust. If we don't teach about the Holocaust, Holocaust will and continue to happen again. Genocides continue to happen all around the world. So let's not see this as a way to close off the conversation, people. Please, no. Don't be afraid to question. Don't be afraid to challenge. I think Whoopi got it wrong, but I think her heart's in the right place. And whether something is racial or not racial, you know what? The reason the boundaries are unclear is because the whole thing is made up to begin with. It's not about biology. And since it's not about biology, racism is itself about man's inhumanity to man. So I think that's all I want to say right now. And I appreciate anyone who's taken the time to watch this. And hey, if you have any questions or want to chat with me about it, let's talk about it. I am never afraid to talk about race or religion or the Jewish people or being gay or any of those things. These are the things that have fascinated me all my life, because to me, we must fight all injustice wherever it occurs, particularly injustice against people who have no choice in the matter. I think that's what Whoopi was trying to say. Whoopi was trying to say, hey, black people can't choose if they're black or not, and they're being persecuted because of it, and that makes it different. Okay, but asking someone not to be Jewish to leave their people in order not to be persecuted, that's not cool either. And gay people can't determine if we're gay or not, or lesbian or not, or trans or not. Now, I guess bisexual people can choose to manifest their bisexuality in different ways, but they can't choose whether to be bisexual or not. So none of this is a choice. And if you're born in the Jewish people, for the Nazis, it wasn't a choice. Even if you became a Catholic priest, they would still send you to the gas chambers if you had Jewish blood in you. So all of these persecutions rarely allow a choice. And there's a reason why. When that synagogue in Texas, where recently, where Jews were taken hostage, and some Christians had exactly the wrong response. And they meant well. They said, well, we have security in our church too. You know what? Nobody goes into a white church and tries to kill the people there because they're Christian. I haven't heard of such a thing. Maybe it happens somewhere. I haven't heard of it. They go to black churches to kill blacks because people are racist. They go to Jewish synagogues to kill Jews because people hate Jews. And in fact, some 60% of all religious hate crimes are towards Jews. There's anti-Islam, there's anti-Muslim hate crimes as well, because people hate Muslims, much, much smaller, much, much lesser number than people who hate Jews. We're hated more. Yay. But it's not about security in religious institutions either. It's about Jew hatred, which happens to be the oldest hatred, continuing hatred, known to mankind. Yes, the hatred of Jews predates slavery in Virginia by a good 4,000 years. After all, I'm from the originally enslaved. Well, maybe not originally. There were probably peoples enslaved before the Jewish people who were enslaved in Egypt 3,500 years ago. And we remember it every Passover. So this isn't about a paint-off. This isn't about comparing slavery and the Holocaust. We don't have to compare levels of evil. Evil is evil. And I do think that's what will be meant by man's inhumanity to man. But I think that when people throw around race as if they know exactly what it means, we have to admit that race has meant many different things to many different people over many periods of time. And what really matters is our commitment to treating everyone fairly and equally, and not to discriminate against anybody based on their perceived race or religion or ethnicity or sexual orientation, or whether or not they're tall or short or fat or thin, or have a mental or physical disability or not. And maybe just Rodney King said it best. Can't we all get along? Thanks for listening.